Tennessee Williams was born Thomas Lanier Williams on March 26, 1911, in Columbus, Mississippi, and died February 25, 1983, at age 71. His parents were Edwina and Cornelius Coffin Williams. His mother was a quiet Southern belle that was totally devoted to her children, and whose behavior bordered on unstable and distraught. His father worked as a traveling salesman and was rarely home. Williams was a weak, sickly child that contracted many childhood diseases. To him, his father was a heavy-drinking, brash, hard-hitting man. Until age 10, he lived quietly at the home of his grandparents. Being a sickly child, he could not go to school, so he spent his days reading in his grandfather's library. The worst trauma happened when he was 12. His father was moved to the home office of the shoe factory he worked for in St. Louis. He had to leave behind his grandparents' quiet, extensive home to move to a small repulsive tenement in St. Louis. Subsequently, there were many moves around the city as he grew. He was moved from a loving home where he felt free and happy to a city where he never fit in. He turned into himself and began to make up stories and write to escape. This formed him in a lasting way. At this time, his father was not traveling any longer and was around now. At school, he was not accepted. He was taunted and scorned for his Southern drawl. Around this time, his older sister Rose began to recede into herself and lost herself into a world of her own making. She was diagnosed with schizophrenia. Her parents allowed a frontal lobotomy to be performed, and it went terribly wrong. She then had to be placed into an institution for the rest of her life. Later, when he could, he transferred her to a private hospital in upstate New York, where he visited her often. He assigned a percent of many of his top plays for her care. It was always believed that her illness played a part in his drug and alcohol abuse. After high school, he started college at the University of Missouri for journalism. He did not like his classes and began to write poetry instead. Later, he failed ROTC and had to leave school. After that, he started working in the shoe factory with his father. He was never happy. He began to write more and more. He worked all day, wrote all night. He lasted 2 years at this pace and then had a nervous breakdown. He then went to his grandfather's house in Mississippi to recover. About a year later, he went back to school at Washington University, but this time he joined a group of writers. And 2 years later, he went to the University of Iowa, where he earned a BA degree in English. He then studied at the Dramatic Workshop in New York, where he fell in love forever with the theater. It was at this time that he took the name Tennessee Williams. It was never known if he took it because that's where his father was from, or if that was the nickname he was dubbed in school because of his accent. Williams came from a dysfunctional family with an abusive father, a neurotic mother, and who was later a struggling writer that worked himself around the country with small jobs of every sort to support himself. With the support of his agent, he was given a grant from the Rockefeller Foundation that carried him over and to be able to devote more of his time to writing that sent his career soaring. Williams was a playwright that was loved, applauded, hated, and deplored all at the same time. His plays are still considered controversial and shocking, but he has always and still does have the largest following of any living American dramatist. He showed life for what it really was. He wrote things that people did not want to speak of openly, much less see in production. He has too many plays, poems, and short stories to list, but he's best known for The Glass Menagerie, Cat on a Hot Tin Roof, The Rose Tattoo, and A Streetcar Named Desire. In The Glass Menagerie, it was his first major success as a playwright. It was modeled after his sister Rose. Laura only wanted to lose herself in her own world, as did his own sister. His mother was the model for the character Amanda in the same production, showing her controlling and overbearing ways, to the way she tried to marry her daughter off at any cost, as was the way of the old upper gentility. Big Daddy and Cat on a Hot Tin Roof was a representation of his father and how Williams saw him. In most of his writings, you will find a character that is Williams himself. He, his family, and his upbringing became the plot of his plays and stories. A Tennessee Williams play is his life.